So the next talk is App Store Optimization for Games with PressPlay's Autonomous Agents. And can we have a big round of applause, please?
Thank you so much. Hey guys, I'm Moritz. I'm co-founder at Phiture. I'm leading the AI strategy over at Phiture. I founded and sold to online gaming companies, and I also led the international growth team at SoundCloud. Today I'm going to talk about app optimization for games and how to automate that with the help of AI. So Phiture, we're a mobile growth consultancy and agency. We're working with a lot of games publishers, but also non-games apps. We're based out of Berlin, but have a team all across the globe. At the very end of 2023, when, I think it was 2022, when ChatGPT came out, we had already done a lot with AI within our consultancy. We have a bunch of engineers, data scientists, data analysts who are working on things like predictive analytics, which Kansu talked about a lot in the previous session. But we've never worked with generative AI, and we saw that as a major opportunity to overhaul the business, relook at how we're doing things, and actually drive more impact for our clients. And so that's why we set up an incubator called Phiture AI Labs. And basically, together with the whole engineering and data science team, as well as consultants, we started that incubator with the idea to launch 7 different proof of concepts within the realm of a couple of months. And out of that, of course, we had to kill a lot of those concepts because there was not enough maturity inside of the concept to actually drive it forward based on the APIs and the models that were available. But there were actually quite a few that were super, super interesting. And so I'll call out a few, and I will be talking mostly today about this guy, PressPlay. But I'll call out a few. So we have launched Experiment Insights at Scale, where we track all of the A/B tests that games publishers are running in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store globally. So we're monitoring that ongoingly if they have a test running, and then we see whether or not that test has been applied after it's been running for a while. And based on that, we can make predictions on what conversion tactics are working in a specific market for hyper-casual games or within kind of the genre that you're playing in. AISA, I will also say a few words about that in a second, but then we also had ASO keyword automation. So can we predict the perfect kind of keyword metadata and iterate on that automatically without human involvement? And then PressPlay finally. So AISA is our bit reinforcement learning model. So it's a self-learning model which the way it works, we look at when a client comes on board, we pull all of the historical bit changes in on Apple Search Ads. We look at what the client's objective was, and then we look at what impact those bit changes actually had on that objective. And we, over the course of 2-3 days, we train a model specifically for that client to understand basically understand like what bit changes have resulted in which results. And then we train that model on millions of simulations where we basically, every time that it predicts a bit change right, we give it a cookie. And so that model, within the course of a couple of days, becomes really good at predicting what the outcome of a certain bit change on a certain keyword will be. And that led to a lot of clients really seeing massive we just heard Kansu saying like the CPIs have doubled in gaming last year. And so it was really fantastic to see that we were able to, we now just launched a case study where we were able to decrease the cost per acquisition by 39%. But this one is still a little bit older, where we actually were able to drive up the number of installs by quite a lot at a significantly reduced cost per acquisition. The other the fourth one that you saw on the slide is PressPlay. And at Phiture, we've been doing app store optimization for over the last 10 years almost. And we basically are, the question that we ask ourselves with app store optimization is, with the app stores, with so many apps out there, how can you make sure that people will be able to find your app, but then also, if they see your assets, that they actually download your app, right? Conversion rate optimization is that second part. And that's the part that we focus on in our regular ASO engagements. We have a framework, tried and tested framework, where we basically go in manually, look for each client at, what are popular features, what have you found in your user testing that people really like about the game, et cetera, et cetera. So basically doing the research and then hypothesizing on the findings of that research, prioritizing the different hypotheses, the different experiments, if you will, and then creating those assets with our creative team. And then testing the assets either in the Google Play Store listing experiments or on the App Store. And then every time we run a test, we want to learn and iterate on the learnings. Now with PressPlay, we really wanted to figure out how can we create a new paradigm that does a lot of this automatically. And so with Wildlife Studios in October of 2023, we started a 8-week pilot period where we generated all of the assets and deployed them automatically inside of the Google Play Store listing experiments. So within 8 weeks, we had launched 322 variants. We killed a lot of them, but we also had quite a few wins that really moved the needle for them. Of course, we wanted to make sure that we can repeat that success, and we did that with Lion Studios from AppLovin, where we, in 6 weeks, deployed 200 experiments and drove 600K in projected installs, as well as Lockwood Publishing. They have a game called Evokin Live, where we drove 1.5 million increase in projected installs. So the way it works, or the assets that we can test with it, are the icon, the screenshot order. I'll come back to that, but it's basically like in which order should you position all of the 8 beautiful screenshots that you have for your game. The feature graphic, which is basically shown when the video hasn't started yet, also very prominent, and then the short description. And so for each of these asset types, we want to generate with GenAI automatically the best performing assets, and then deploy them automatically in the Google Play Store. So when we started with Wildlife, the first round of the first batch that we had generated was really performing super bad. And we had a little bit of a tough client conversation. I mean, they knew it was a pilot, it was like experimental software, but we were pretty shocked by the results, and so we quickly, after 2 weeks of running the first batch of experiments, we iterated on the way that we were generating these experiments by basically feeding back the results into the assistant that we had built, which generates these experiments. And so in round 2, you already see that we got a lot better results in the Play Store experiments, and then in round 3, we finally had that first big win of around 13% average conversion rate increase. And that's really what the intelligent assistant that we built is doing. We basically initialize it, we tell it everything that we know about the game, branding guidelines, what can you do in the game. We feed it all of the metadata that you have already in the store. We feed it with all of the reviews, what are people raving about in the reviews. All these data points basically go into the assistant, and then we start having it generate hypotheses. And then it goes to the testing backlog. There's still an approval process, but for the rest, it's all automated. It's just pressing play. That's also why we call it PressPlay, to deploy these automated creatives that we're providing. And then we have rule-based, intelligent rule-based applying and killing rules in there as well. And for each of the experiments, we also ask the assistant, what did you learn about this experiment based on the results? So with African Life, when we started with them, the best available model with a proper API available was DALL-E 3. And so we started with that model, but you can see that it's not really like, it's really this typical DALL-E 3 style. And so it was not really, even though it was generating already a massive win over the original app icon, we felt like, together with the client, like this is not really in the style of the game. And so we asked them for a bunch of assets from this lady over here. We started fine-tuning models. In this case, we fine-tuned a stable diffusion Excel model. And we did that by feeding it all these different characters that you see to the left. And then we're suddenly able to position that character wherever on a horse in the desert, and we started to run like hundreds of experiments on that particular icon, and that led to massive gain in conversion rate over already so basically the compounding growth that you can get from really iterating on these icons. The screenshot order experiment, so you have probably with your creative team, your artists, put a lot of effort into creating 8 beautiful screenshots. You might have put them to an A/B test already in the Google Play Store. You might have found that test actually exceeded the conversion rate of your current listing and have applied it. But you haven't probably tested like, are these actually in the order of importance to the user? And so if you want to do that, it takes quite a bit of testing, because like 8 to the 8th is quite a few permutations. So if you would test each permutation for 1 week, you would end up with 773 years of testing. That doesn't work, isn't really scalable, and so we figured out a way how to kind of predict based on very short, rapid tests in the Play Store, really predict like what the perfect combination is of all of those 880,000 different permutations of the 8 different screenshots. And based on that, we're then running a final A/B test where we are able to get the win that we had predicted. So we typically run the top 3 outcomes that the prediction has yielded, and then see which one is indeed outperforming the current listing. Well, what's interesting, by the way, to see is that a lot of these screenshot tests that we were running, actually 2 screenshots oftentimes outperformed the 8 screenshots that our clients had in there. So there's a lot of gain that you can make in terms of like really predicting what the right setup is. So we were struggling with getting the characters right. Later on, and to the left you see basically the input imagery, and to the right all the different outputs that we can generate. But basically once we had fixed that issue, we run into a new issue with hexasort, where we really had a hard time in getting the hectagons right, and so we also did a bunch of fine-tuning on different models, Stable Diffusion Excel, and later in the year Flux. I don't know if you guys have used Flux and Flux Pro, but it's really outperforming like the result of Stable Diffusion Excel, which you can also see here. Like this was something that we hadn't noticed on a very small, like basically the size of an icon in the Play Store. We weren't able to kind of spot that there was something weird with this image, both of these images actually. But the community of this game actually, they were a little bit more vigilant and actually saw, even though that these icons were outperforming the current icon, there was quite a bit of backlash, so you still need to really like make sure that whatever you're generating is really doesn't have an extra leg or an extra arm. This was especially the case with Stable Diffusion Excel. So actually throughout last year when we were developing PressPlay, we switched I think like 4 or 5 times in terms of the image model that we're using. Because that is like going at such a crazy speed in which these image models are adhering to the brief better, that we're sending over, adhering to like putting no extra legs on the characters that we're putting out. And so we made significant improvements already just by switching like one line of code and using a different model that just came out. So these days we're using Flux for this, but there's tons of other models that are getting really, really good. We also, for feature graphics and for splash screens, we're also working with a third party. You consider it as sort of an Adobe Photoshop where you have all your layers, or your Figma, but where we are able to replace those layers with the copy and the background imagery that we generate. And this works really well for games where we can also upload your custom font, and where we can really align kind of the experiment hypothesis with both the copy that we're showing and the imagery that we're showing on the screenshot or on the feature graphic. And then finally, sky is the limit. Like you don't have to work with hundreds of freelance translators anymore. You can just push this out into tons of different localizations. And that's also what we're doing. So we have typically with a client, we would have somewhere from 10 to 50 concurrent, it depends a little bit on your traffic, but 10 to 50 concurrent experiments running at the same time. Technically, if you're a Google Play partner, you can go up to 505, but that starts making no sense anymore because then you're touching on really low traffic countries. So the way that we're doing that is we're setting up custom store listings for all of the top markets and are basically testing in those markets. And we have the smart early kill rules, as well as like the AI assistant that really learns about like what works and what didn't work. So these are these smart early kill rules. So basically all the automation is running 24/7, looks at the data of each experiment, sees if there's experiment slots available where we need to deploy a new experiment, but also kills experiments that have exceeded the maximum number of days or that are already showing, even though Google doesn't call it out yet, they're showing us already a pretty negative conversion and we just want to move on from that experiment. So we do kill quite a few experiments in the process, really all to find that big breakout winner that we can discover much quicker by scaling those experiments very quickly. Yeah, and then finally we built a web app around this. This is not a client of ours, but like the way that data works is that you can, as a client, just approve these experiments by pressing play. Every experiment comes with a hypothesis and an experiment title so that you also have a bit of an idea of where this is coming from. And that the system can also learn about whether or not that hypothesis was the right one to go after. And you get also all of the results of with some clients we have 8 years of experiment data, and so that muscle memory that might leave the company if an ASO practitioner or so leaves your game studio, but here you can actually have everything in one view. We're also working on kind of a synthesized learning overview that you can then access if you ever need to look at, okay, what were the big wins that we had in the past and how can we build on top of that. What we're working on now is really going from this one single agent assistant idea to a multi-agent autonomous system where we have one agent overseeing basically the whole strategy, and then we have specialized agents for each of the bits and bobs that they need to review, or they need to do certain research, like for example scraping reviews from the Google Play Store and then presenting them back to the ASO strategist as here's like what people are raving about in the reviews. You have a learning agent that collects all the learnings that we have from the historical experiment. And then we also have these QA agents that make sure that all of the experiments are on par. There's no extra limbs in there. It follows brand compliance, and it also follows any legal compliance that your company might have or or at least the Google Play guidelines. And we find that putting everything into one agent, in one assistant, waters down a little bit the capabilities of that assistant, and therefore I truly believe that this is the future and that future is here today already, but we're now testing this out for the first time. Yeah, to recap, we can scale thousands, I've run now thousands of experiments with many different clients. We can automate all those experiments very quickly, and we can also report back to the clients, presenting that in kind of an all-in-one view of the portfolio of apps. And some of these studios, they might have 10, 20, 30 different apps. And so having that all in one place is also a big benefit for keeping sanity and not having to click through all of the different Google Play Store experiments in all the different consoles. So yeah, that's in a nutshell PressPlay. I think I might have a minute or so I don't know what time it is, but any questions? Yeah.
I guess a natural limitation of running a lot of A/B tests is like the sample size, like how many downloads you have as a company. Like at what kind of scale of a company would you say it makes sense to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we typically suggest it's a recommended value of 100,000 installs a month for one title. And then we break it down by all of the different countries in which it makes sense to run a test. Of course, if you have like 10 downloads a month in a specific market, it doesn't make sense to run an A/B test there. But for many clients, actually, the way we're doing it as well is like they have an ASO team running in the core 3 geos or so, core 5 geos, and we're just taking kind of the long tail, getting learnings also back into the ASO team that is running kind of the manual A/B tests, getting the learnings back into their hands so that they can also apply that or test that in the United States, for example. But the lion's share of clients that we have on PressPlay, we run everything, basically all the markets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.